Hello and welcome back to another great video. Today we are going to see how to connect Apache Hive Metastore to your Spring Boot application. To the ones who do not know what Apache Hive is, I would really recommend you to check out the last video that we did on Apache Hive, which tells you what is Hive and why do we need it, right? So without a further ado, we are going to do the same thing that we always do. I have already written a Medium article, so if you like going through tutorials, you can check the Medium article out, or you can follow through this video, which is going to do the same thing but practically. Cool. Now before we start with anything else, I have already started my Apache Hive server using Docker. I will add the commands in down below in the description if you want them, but usually it is assumed that you have Apache Hive already started, since we are only going to connect it to a Spring Boot application and call different APIs to see whether we are able to interact with it. All right. Now the first things first, man. We are going to see what dependencies we need in making this happen. So if you see, there are a few dependencies that you can see on the screen. There's Spring Boot Starter Web, there's the Hive Metastore dependency, there's Hadoop dependency, and there's another Hadoop dependency called client runtime. So, right. So the Spring Boot Starter Web, I think it is pretty obvious. Most of you might already know we are going to use it to create the REST APIs, right? So our aim is basically to create a GET request that we can hit and get all the names of databases in our Apache Hive. All right. Then the second one here that you see is the Hive Metastore dependency. Now, Hive Metastore dependency is mostly used by us for two main reasons. First is to configure the Hive. So when I say configuration, it means providing the URL on which we can hit Hive. So Hive basically works with the thrift URL that we are going to see, that we need to provide it through our code. So that is one thing. And second thing that it needs is the location of your Hadoop installation, right? So the ones who do not know, Apache Hive is basically a data warehouse built on top of Apache Hadoop. So that is why to make all this work, you need to provide the location of your Hadoop installation. So that is one more thing that we are going to do. Cool. And a few other things that you might need is Hadoop Commons and Hadoop Client Runtime. You might ask, why do we need it? The exact reason is, as I told you, Hive is based on Hadoop, right? So a lot of classes that it asks for, that it uses internally, are coming from this org.apache.hadoop group, right? So it's useful, or it is essential for us to make sure that these dependencies are present in our pom.xml. Cool. Now, to show you guys, I already have an Eclipse right here, and you can see it is pretty much standard. There is nothing in my pom.xml. I have basically just created a clean Spring Boot project. There's nothing inside it. You can see that there's just the default application class and no other classes. Even application property is pretty much empty. And in pom.xml also only has one dependency right now, which is the Spring Boot Starter Web. Also, you have Spring Boot Starter Test, but I don't think that we really need it. So let's just get rid of it. All right. So now let's follow. As we saw in the article, there are 4 dependencies that we need to install: Hive Metastore, 2 Hadoop dependencies, right, and 1 Spring Boot Starter Web. So we have Spring Boot Starter Web. So I will add 3 dependencies here and then move on to the next part of the application. All right. So you'll simply just copy paste the dependencies from the same article, and I would really suggest you to do so. Okay. It takes a few minutes sometimes to install everything, download it, set all the different Maven dependencies in the class path. Yeah, so you can see that most of the things are built now and we have the dependencies in place, right? So let's go on and create our REST controller in which we are going to have our GET request API, right? So to do that, what I usually do is I have a different package. I create a different package called controllers, right? And inside this package, I will create a new class that we can call Hive Metastore controller. Seems pretty obvious. All right, now we have a controller in place. We will just add the related annotation. So we'll use REST controller annotation. You can also use the controller annotation, but REST controller is pretty much stable, I would say. Right. With that, what we need is we are going to use the get mapping annotation and provide the path called /getDBS. So what our aim is, as I told you at the beginning of the video, we are going to get the names of all different DBs inside Apache Hive that we have right now. So once we are able to achieve that, that means we are golden. We were able to actually properly hit our Apache Hive server or Hive Metastore server actually. Cool. All right. Let's create a simple method and we will return a list of strings that will be the name of our databases, right? DBS, and here we go, right? Okay. Now we have our function in place. Now let's see what else do we need, right? So few more things that you need to do. So now you have dependencies placed. Second thing that you need to do is you need to set up your Hadoop. So to the people who do not have Hadoop installed, I would really, you have to actually, honestly, you can check this link out that I've shared in the particular article. So once you click on the link, it should take you to the Apache Hadoop release registry. Here you need to simply click on the binary download of the latest version of Hadoop, right? So make sure you click on that. Once you click on that, it will redirect you to a new page after which your down installation, or you can say the download of the tar.gz file will start, right? So make sure you download this file, and once the file is downloaded, make sure that you export it in a location where you can find it easily. Now assuming that you have already downloaded the file and you have the location, let's go to the next part of this particular code. So what you need to do is you need to copy the path of the folder that contains bin. So inside your Hadoop folder, you will find a bin folder, right? So you don't have to go inside the bin folder, but rather you have to go until the Hadoop folder that contains the bin folder. So it might look something like this. So this first part is basically what I have done. I created a dummy folder inside which I have a Hadoop 3.4.1 zip file or tar.gz file extracted, right? So just copy down that path. Once you copy that path, we are now going to set it up in our code. So you might ask, how do we set it up in your code? So you need to set it up as an environment variable. Now in Java or in Spring Boot especially, if you want to set environment variable through your code, you need to use a method called system.setProperty. So that is what we are going to do. We are going to go through each line of this particular program and understand what it means, right? So we'll just simply paste the line here. You can see what it does is, one sec. Yeah. Yeah. So basically you can see what it does is, from the system class, there's a method called set property that accepts two things. First is the key and the second is the value. So that means we have an environment variable now with the name hadoop.home.dir, which basically represents your Hadoop home directory. And this is the value that we have provided to it. That is the location of the bin folder. Now this is necessary for Hive to actually work, because Hive will be looking for this particular folder in your code. Now, assuming that you have Hive set up properly, the next thing we need to do is we need to provide the link for our Hive server, right? So Hive is a pretty old technology, so it accepts thrift protocol URLs. So usually what it looks like is pretty much similar to how we put HTTPS before an HTTPS, before basically like a website, right? Before a website, we use the protocol HTTPS:// in similar way, we'll be using thrift protocol here. So you can see I've written thrift here and : now this particular path is coming from my localhost, because my Apache Hive server is live on my localhost in the Docker container, right? So for you, if you have your particular Hive hosted on some other public URL or private URL, make sure that you change this with the respective URL to your Apache Hive server. Now 9083 is the default port for thrift, so of course localhost : 9083. Now this URL should hit our Hive Metastore. Right. So now we have a URL. The next thing I told you is we had imported a Hive-Metastore dependency to configure our Hive, right? So when I say configure, that means we are going to provide these two things: the Hadoop home directory location and the thrift URL to our Hive configuration. To do that, a simple class comes into picture. The name of the class is HiveConf. As it is pretty obvious, HiveConf means Hive configuration. So to make sure you import it from org.apache.hadoop-hive.conf. You might find a few other options. Do not click on others. Make sure you install it or import it from this particular location. So you can see we have an object of HiveConf. Now we will provide it with all the necessary URLs that it needs. So to do that, HiveConf comes with a method called setVar. So HiveConf dot set var, and set var accepts two things. First is the Hadoop home directory URL, and second, sorry, the first one it accepts is the Metastore URI. Second is the thrift URL, right? So it is similar to set property method. There's a key, there's a value, and basically it maps the particular key to the particular value. So the key here that we are going to give is hiveconf. Oh, oops, my bad. Hiveconf. You can see here that I'm using class, not the object right now. Yeah, hiveconf dot get conf vars. Oh, not get conf var, just conf vars. Even this is a class, right? Not a variable. And dot we are going to provide metastore URIs. Cool. So this will basically map the URL that we are going to provide as our Hive Metastore URL. So assuming that what all that we have done is correct, final thing that you need to do is create a Metastore client. So as I said, all the names are pretty much obvious and easy to remember. So for Hive Metastore client, make sure you use Hive Metastore client, right? Hive Metastore client, new. Okay, so now we have an object of Hive Metastore client, which we need to provide our Hive configuration to it. So I've just provided the Hive configuration object to it, which should work. Yeah, few things that you need to ensure is that add all the throws declaration that are present. That is the meta exception. So if it is not able to find your particular or any of your configuration is incorrect, which is basically your thrift URL is incorrect, it will throw a meta exception. So you need to throw it here, or you can handle it using a try catch. It's all up to you, honestly. Right. Next thing that we need to do is one final thing is call our get databases method. Right. So to do it, I'll use this particular object that we created and call get get I believe get all databases, right? I hope so. Yeah, get all databases. Cool. This should return you all different databases that we have. Now again, this also will throw an exception if you don't have any databases in place, or if your configuration is correct. So add a throws exception for that as well, right? So now we have a throws exception. Now we have called our get databases. We need to store this into variable. If you see here, what it returns is list of strings, right? Oops. Yeah, it returns a list of strings. So we will simply create an object called list of strings and dbs. Cool. And return it through our get request. Now, if everything is right, this should work without any hiccups. So let us waste no more time and try it out whether it works or not. So to run it, basically, if you have never used Eclipse, just make sure you go to your POC application.java class. So this one, right click on it and run as a Java application. So it's saying that we do have a few errors, right? So we can see that those errors exist in the particular tests, right? And we honestly do not need tests, so we are good to delete them, right? So I think we are out of any errors now. Let's just go ahead and run our Java application. So the first time it launches, it might take a few seconds, but you can see that some things are happening on the screen now. Yeah. Okay. Here you can see that our Hive Metastore application is started successfully on port 8080. Yeah, right. So yeah, let me just show it to you. Okay, so you can see that here I will write localhost 8080 slash get dbs, right? And once I do that, it will hit the get request and fetch the database names for us. So if I just refresh it, you can see we have got a response called an array with just one string called default. So I've not created any new databases in my Hive server. So that is why only one database exists, that is default. So if you have an existing Hive server, which you are actually using, and you might have multiple databases, multiple tables, all the good stuff. So you might get more granular results. So that's it. And that is how we are able to basically connect our Hive Metastore to our Spring Boot application. So if this has been useful to you, make sure you like, subscribe, share it with anybody who needs it, and see you in the next one.